I stepped off the shuttle onto the landing platform of a planet I had never set foot on before. Zavrin, a peaceful alien world, was on the cusp of joining the Galactic Council, and I, Captain Jack Turner, had been sent as a human representative for the diplomatic mission. I was expecting high-level talks, boring speeches, and the usual diplomatic stuff, but I never imagined it would lead me straight into a cooking disaster. The moment the ambassador, Zelorn, an alien with glowing blue skin and 4 arms, greeted me, I knew this wasn't going to be a typical mission. Zelorn insisted on taking me straight to his home for the official welcome meal. I assumed it was going to be a simple affair, but it was the beginning of something far more absurd. The ambassador's mansion was a futuristic marvel, all glass and steel, with strange floating sculptures hanging in midair. It was like a 3D art gallery, but with more alien than human vibes. We entered a room with a holographic display, and I could already feel a strange vibration in the air, something unfamiliar. The walls were lined with alien cooking gadgets that seemed to hum with life. "I hope you enjoy our cuisine, Captain," Zelorn said, his 4 eyes twinkling. "But we don't know much about your Earth food. We've only seen it in your broadcasts." I couldn't help but laugh. "Well, you're in for a treat. I'm happy to cook for you, actually." He looked at me, intrigued. You cook?" I grinned. "I'm a seasoned chef. You'll love it." Big mistake. He led me to the kitchen, if you could call it that. The layout was insane. Every surface had a glowing panel. There were gravity-defying pots, and a fridge that had eyes, literally. It followed me around the room, as if it was aware of my every move. The floor was made of some transparent material that shimmered with colors I couldn't even begin to describe. It looked like a kitchen in a sci-fi movie that was both dazzling and terrifying. There was no going back now. "Please, Captain, impress us with your cuisine," Zelorn encouraged as he stood back, waiting to see what I would do. I could feel the eyes of the alien assistants on me, watching my every move. The pressure was on. I had to cook something they'd remember. At first, I tried to be confident, strutting like I was Gordon Ramsay, but the alien kitchen technology quickly threw me off balance. The first thing I tried to use was the oven. It looked like a typical stove, but with an energy core in the middle. I assumed it would work like a regular oven, so I tossed some potatoes in, hoping to roast them. But as soon as I closed the door, the temperature gauge shot up, and then the oven started vibrating like it was having a meltdown. "What the hell?" I muttered, pressing random buttons. The oven flashed, and I heard a mechanical voice say, "Time-bending mode activated." Time-bending mode? Oh, this was just fantastic. Before I could do anything, the potatoes disappeared, like they had been sucked into another dimension. Not a good start, I thought. I turned to look at the assistants, hoping they hadn't noticed, but their 4 eyes were fixed on the oven in awe. Zelorn, seeing my confusion, stepped forward. "Ah, I see the dimensional oven has malfunctioned. It usually doesn't do that on the first try." "Well, it's definitely doing it now," I replied, half laughing, half panicking. What else can go wrong? And, of course, something did. As I moved to grab some seasoning from a sentient spice rack, a purple smoke started pouring out of it. The spices leapt from the shelf, forming into a floating cloud that swirled around the room. The cloud whispered something, and suddenly, the entire kitchen's gravity reversed. Everything, including the utensils, began to float. The kitchen assistants were scrambling to hold on to the floating objects, but nothing seemed to work. Pots and pans clattered to the ceiling, and I barely managed to grab a nearby floating knife as I began to drift upwards. I swear, space cooking was never meant to be this hard. But the strangest part? Zelorn looked absolutely delighted by the chaos unfolding. He turned to me with a grin that was more alien than anything I had ever seen. "This is a great first trial, Captain," he exclaimed, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "We've never had such unpredictable energy in our kitchen before." I stared at him, still floating near the ceiling, now desperately holding onto a saucepan to avoid getting lost in the kitchen's zero gravity. This is not what I had in mind for a welcome dinner, I managed to say, my voice strained with frustration. Zelorn's laughter echoed in the room as I attempted to make sense of the disaster. "You are a brave human," he said, his forearms crossing his chest as if watching me try to survive a kitchen from a nightmare. But we expect great things from your Earth cuisine. Great things? I was barely holding on to my sanity at this point, let alone trying to impress these aliens with anything. As I finally managed to regain control, a small blender popped out of nowhere, its tiny robotic arms clanking together as it activated itself. A high-pitched whirring sound filled the room, and before I could stop it, the blender began whipping up an unknown alien substance. I looked at Zelorn, pleading for a break. "What the hell is that thing?" I asked, gesturing to blender as it began to spit out an unidentifiable slime that started dancing in the air. He smiled as though this was all part of some grand plan. "It's the alien smoothie machine, of course. It's designed to blend not just ingredients, but concepts from across the galaxy. You're bound to make something unique." "Yeah, well, so far, all I was making was a mess. At this rate, my chances of cooking a simple Earth dish were slipping further and further away, and I was starting to feel like I might need a miracle to get through this." I took a deep breath, trying to think of a solution. "All right, let's try something simple," I said, my hand shaking. I reached for the closest ingredient I could find and tried to get back on track. The alien seemed fascinated by everything I did, watching in awe as I struggled to keep the situation from spiraling completely out of control. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice that there was more curiosity than concern in their eyes. At that moment, it occurred to me I wasn't just cooking for them. I was unknowingly participating in a test, a challenge that I had no business accepting. But there was no turning back now. I had to cook my way out of this. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was mounting. I had no idea what I was doing anymore, but I had to finish this cooking challenge. The alien chefs, who were clearly well-versed in the art of intergalactic cuisine, were watching intently, their four eyes locked on me, their expressions a mix of confusion and amusement. "Captain, we believe your Earth cuisine has a unique flair," Zelorn said, his forearms crossed. "But I must ask, what exactly are you making?" I turned to face him, trying to look calm despite the chaos unfolding in the kitchen. "Well, I was aiming for something simple, maybe a classic Earth dish, something they can understand." I wiped my brow, realizing I had no idea where the ingredients had gone. But right now, this looks like intergalactic hell on a plate. The alien assistants, who had been floating around the kitchen in zero gravity, were trying their best to help, but they only seemed to make things worse. One alien, who I had learned was called Zulon, had picked up a floating frying pan and was attempting to cook something. The only problem was, instead of eggs or vegetables, Zulon's frying pan contained glowing rocks that were now sizzling and popping like fireworks. "What exactly are you trying to cook?" I asked, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. Zulon waved one of his arms dismissively, causing the rocks to fly off the pan and hit the ceiling. "It is a traditional dish from our homeworld," he replied. "We burn rocks in our culture to enhance the flavor." I blinked. "You what? Burn rocks?" Zelorn chimed in. "It is a delicacy. It's more of a spiritual experience than a meal, really." "Right," I said, try not to look as confused as I felt. "Well, my dish won't require burning rocks. Thank you very much. We humans prefer edible food." At this point, I needed a miracle. I looked around the kitchen, feeling the pressure of the situation settle in. The sentient fridge kept opening and closing on its own, and the time-bender spice grinder was still malfunctioning, shooting out bursts of time-altering dust that were slowly disintegrating the ingredients. I stared at the fridge, desperate for a solution. Suddenly, an idea popped into my head. Maybe I could salvage this mess by using something simple from human cuisine, a dish that didn't rely on these impossible gadgets or exotic ingredients. I grabbed a handful of dried beans, a spoonful of salt, and a few other common ingredients. "I'm going to make a classic Earth chili," I announced, trying to sound confident. The alien chef seemed intrigued, but I could tell they had no clue what a chili was. Zulon had started floating next to me, his tentacles reaching for a container. "This will add a bit of flavor," he said, holding up a strange purple paste. "Is that edible?" I asked, looking skeptical. He shrugged. "It is a paste that sustains us. It's quite delicious." I hesitated, but took the paste anyway, thinking it might add some interesting texture to the dish. As I poured into the pot, the paste turned into a gelatinous mass that quickly spread throughout the chili, turning it a sickly shade of purple. Well, this is not what I had in mind. I muttered. Zelorn's eyes were wide with fascination. "What is that?" he asked. I could feel my patience running out. "This," I said, "is my human twist on chili. Just let me work." As I stirred the concoction, the time-bender spice grinder went off again, shooting out some sort of green powder that made everything glow. The smell was awful. I could already see the aliens wrinkling their faces, unsure whether this was supposed to be a treat or a trap. All right, I muttered, "Let's just finish this disaster." I tried to calm myself down and focus on the next step, getting the chili to simmer. But the moment I turned the heat up, the stove activated its anti-gravity setting, and the chili flew straight up in the air, splattering the walls. Zelorn and the others watched, utterly intrigued by the chaos. "It's so unpredictable," Zelorn remarked. "Your cooking is a form of art." "Art? It's a mess," I retorted, desperately trying to catch the floating chili with a magnetic ladle I had somehow found. The ladle shot across the room, ricocheting off the ceiling and knocking over a pyramid of spoons that had somehow formed from the fridge's various utensils. The assistant next to me, an alien named Frill, decided it was his time to jump in and assist. He floated over to the stove, grabbed the wrong knob, and activated a teleportation sequence that sent the entire pot of chili to the far side of the room, where it landed directly into a sink full of alien goo. The goo began to bubble, and I could already feel my sanity slipping away. "Well, that's one way to make chili," I said sarcastically. Zelorn laughed, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "This has become more than just cooking," he said. "It is a test of adaptability, of human resilience in the face of disaster." I had no idea what he was talking about, but it sounded like he was enjoying the chaos. The sentient fridge, which had been watching me with a very creepy awareness, chimed in. "Would you like some ice cream with that, Captain?" I threw my hands up in the air. "Sure, why not?" In the background, I heard Zolan and Frill discussing their intergalactic culinary history, clearly fascinated by the disaster that was now my human chili. This was definitely not the way I had planned this mission, but now it seemed like I was at the mercy of an alien kitchen that had a mind of its own, and not in the way I wanted it to. At that moment, I realized something crucial. If I didn't embrace the absurdity of this entire situation, I would lose my mind. I decided to lean into the madness. Whatever I was cooking, however disastrous it turned out, I had to make it work. After all, I was still in a cooking competition with alien chefs. I couldn't just give up now. As the pot of chili sat, now soaked in alien goo, I made my next move. The sentient fridge had finally stopped offering me unwanted ingredients, and Zulon was trying to open a can of what he claimed was human meat, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know where it came from. "I'll just finish this my way," I muttered, gritting my teeth. "If I can't cook like a human, I'll cook like a human with a strange sense of humor." And so, the madness continued. The situation had reached a breaking point. The kitchen was in utter chaos, with flying chili, bizarre goo bubbling in every corner, and alien cooking utensils now completely out of control. I couldn't even remember what I was trying to make anymore. Human chili had transformed into some kind of intergalactic disaster. The time-bender grinder was going off at random intervals, spraying glows and sparks into the air. The sentient fridge had been constantly offering me bizarre alien items, like giant cosmic shrimp and glistening space mushrooms, none of which I had the slightest idea how to handle. I had no choice but to improvise if I wanted to survive this challenge. I looked at the bubbling pot of goo and purple chili that had once resembled food, trying to figure out a way out of this disaster. That's when I saw it. The Zeronian levitating spice rack, which had been completely untouched by the chaos. It was sitting there, undisturbed and pristine, the spices glowing with ethereal light. I quickly darted toward it, determined to salvage what little I could from this mess. I grabbed the nearest spice jar, grabbed its powder. It was labeled, seemed harmless enough. I didn't really know what it was, but I threw it into the pot, hoping it would balance out the bizarre ingredients I had already mixed together. As soon as the powder hit the chili, the pot began to bubble furiously, the kind of bubble that indicated something was about to go horribly wrong. The kitchen assistants backed away, their eyes wide with fascination. "What did you just add?" Zelorn asked, his multiple eyes fixed on the simmering pot, clearly not understanding what was happening. "Gravit's powder," I said, feeling like I was lying to both him and myself at this point. "It's a special earth ingredient. It, enhances the flavor profile." Zelorn nodded, though I could see the doubt in his eyes. The powder seemed to trigger a reaction that sent the contents of the pot swirling violently. It was as if the chili itself had come to life, dancing and spinning in a vortex. The gooey purple substance began to glow in unnatural hues, and I realized in horror that I had accidentally turned the chili into a volatile energy source. Before I could think of what to do next, the entire pot shot up into the air, now suspended in midair, just spinning faster. The kitchen's anti-gravity system kicked in at full force, and everything around me started to float. The utensils, the pots, the ingredients, all were now suspended in the chaotic swirl of energy that my disastrous cooking had unleashed. "I think it's working," I said, my voice tinged with panic. The alien assistants weren't helping. They were simply staring at the spectacle like they had just witnessed a human magic trick. One of them, Frill, clapped his many arms together in what I assumed was applause. In that moment, it occurred to me, I needed to regain control and fast. I needed a solution, something that could fix all this before it spiraled completely out of control. In desperation, I grabbed a handful of random ingredients: molecular salt, some sort of alien meat, and a sprinkle of something called Zarflam, which I hope wasn't poisonous. I tossed them into the mix without any thought, just praying that this crazy concoction would settle down. But the worst possible outcome happened next. The chili began to multiply. Each time a spoon stirred it, the chili seemed to split into smaller, floating versions of itself, hovering around the kitchen like some sort of sentient soup army. They swarmed toward the walls, leaving trails of goo in their wake. I could hear the faint hum of alien cooking appliances trying to fight the chaos, but nothing seemed to work. This wasn't cooking anymore. This was space-time chaos in a pot. "This isn't chili," I shouted, grabbing a nearby alien fork, hoping to pierce one of the floating chili blobs. But it slipped right through like it was made of air. The more I struggled, the more the chili multiplied and swarmed. "Well, this is a new level of cooking, I suppose," I muttered under my breath, resigned to the absurdity of it all. Is this what they mean by gastronomic adventure? The alien chefs were laughing now. They seemed genuinely amused by the spectacle, which only added to my frustration. Zelon, still holding his frying pan full of burning rocks, casually tossing a few more spices into the chaos, thinking that adding more would somehow make the whole thing better. "It's a galactic masterpiece, Captain." Zulon shouted over the growing noise of floating chili and sizzling alien ingredients. "You've created something completely unique." "I'm glad you think so," I replied, unable to hide the sarcasm. "Maybe we'll call it chili by accident." The pot of chili, still floating, suddenly glowed bright red, as though it had become a self-contained energy source. I could feel the heat radiating off of it. This was bad, but at least it wasn't attacking me, yet I reached for the magnetic ladle, hoping I could at least bring it back down. The moment I touched the ladle, the chili seemed to sense my intentions and shifted again, zooming across the kitchen in an impossible direction. "I give up," I shouted, throwing my hands up. "Let's just call this a win for the aliens. You've got your human cuisine, all right?" Zelorn, still smiling in amusement, turned to the others. "It is truly impressive, Captain. Your human resourcefulness is unrivaled. You've taken our kitchen to new heights." I glared at him. Yeah, right. New heights of destruction. At this point, the chili had reached critical mass. There was no turning back. I had created an interdimensional chili, and I had no idea how to stop it. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, I heard a loud whooshing noise from a fridge. The sentient fridge, apparently having had enough of my failures, slammed itself open, releasing a massive blast of cold air that sucked in all the floating chili and sucked it into the fridge. A final moment of chaos occurred as the fridge door slammed shut, leaving behind a haunting silence. I stared at the now-closed fridge, feeling both relieved and utterly defeated. The alien chefs were in stunned silence, clearly unsure whether to congratulate me for creating the world's first sentient floating chili or to question their life choices for agreeing to this experiment in the first place. Well, I said that was fun. Zelorn's voice cut through the silence. You've earned our respect, Captain. You managed to make something no one thought possible. I sighed. Yeah, and next time I'll just stick to sandwiches. The alien chefs were now staring at the fridge, still trying to process what had just happened. I could tell they were as confused as I was. My once promising Earth chili had transformed into an intergalactic disaster, and now it was locked away inside a sentient fridge. The kitchen was silent, save for the occasional hum of the alien appliances still malfunctioning. It felt like the calm after a storm. Only I wasn't sure if I had survived or if I had just been swallowed whole by it. Well, I muttered, trying to make sense of the surreal experience. That was something. Zelorn, still floating next to me, cleared his throat. Captain, I must admit, you've impressed us. We did not expect your Earth cuisine to create such a dramatic response. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was a hint of defeat in my voice. Yeah, well, I don't think anyone expected a floating chili disaster either. I looked at the fridge, hoping it wasn't about to explode. At least the fridge liked it. Zulon, the alien who had been obsessed with his burning rocks, nodded vigorously. Your culinary creations have made our entire kitchen come alive. You've broken boundaries. We must study this. I raised an eyebrow. Study it? Why don't you just give me a medal instead? I feel like I've just summoned a food-based apocalypse. The assistants, who had been hovering nervously, suddenly burst into laughter, clearly delighted by the entire experience. The moment felt absurd, almost too absurd, and yet it was impossible to ignore how much the aliens were enjoying my failure. You humans, Zelorn said with a smile that was both genuine and slightly mischievous, have a unique way of looking at things. I've never seen a kitchen come to life like this. It's quite remarkable. Well, I replied, shaking my head, I guess we don't do things halfway. Either we're cooking or we're creating an existential crisis for the entire kitchen. Before anyone could respond, the sentient fridge suddenly hummed, its lights flickering. A soft ding sounded, and the fridge door slowly opened. There, floating in midair, was the chili. It had somehow transformed. Its purple glow had softened, and it now resembled an intricate dish that looked as though it belonged in some intergalactic gourmet restaurant. I stared at it, dumbfounded. What the hell? Is it? I rubbed my eyes, convinced I was hallucinating. Is that actually food now? Zelorn floated closer, peering into the fridge. This is unbelievable. Captain, I must say, you've truly managed to create something unlike anything we've ever seen. The chili was no longer a chaotic mess. It had somehow evolved into a dish that looked both beautiful and terrifying. The alien goo was now perfectly incorporated into it, and the floating spices had settled into a cohesive flavor profile that defied all logic. I struggled to find the right words. I don't even know how to respond to this. Zelorn turned to the others. You see? This is why we study human culture. We did not expect this outcome, but now we have witnessed something truly extraordinary. The alien chefs were buzzing with excitement. I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and frustration. Sure, I had managed to turn a complete disaster into something they now want to study, but it wasn't exactly the kind of recognition I was hoping for. I didn't need to be crowned a hero. I just want to cook a decent meal and leave this planet without having to clean up a cosmic kitchen disaster. I think you're all a little too enthusiastic, I said dryly, my hands still shaking from the absurdity of the situation. This might look like food now, but I'm telling you it's a fluke. I don't know how I pulled this off. Well, Captain, Zelorn replied, that's the beauty of it. The chaos is what makes it so special. You've created something that cannot be replicated. You have made history. I threw my hands up in the air. History? I barely managed to stop it from blowing up. What's next? Am I going to be immortalized in some galactic cookbook? Zulon, still holding his frying pan full of rocks, seemed genuinely disappointed by my lack of enthusiasm. The Zeronian Council will want to honor you. Your human resourcefulness deserves to be recognized. I stared at him. Honor me for what? For almost turning your kitchen into an interdimensional rift? For somehow making chili that could kill a starship? The aliens were genuinely perplexed by my lack of excitement. They couldn't seem to grasp that I wasn't thrilled by what had just happened. This wasn't about pride or acclaim. I just wanted to get out of this insane kitchen alive. Zelorn, sensing my frustration, floated closer. Captain, you've shown us the true potential of human adaptability. We see now that you are far more than a mere cook. You are a creative force, capable of turning disasters into wonders. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, I've got a talent for turning disasters into even bigger disasters. I'm just trying to stay alive here. But Zelorn wasn't done. We must take this beyond just a cooking challenge. This captain is a breakthrough. We want to send your creation out to the entire galaxy. I froze. Wait, send it out? What? You mean this is going to be a galactic spectacle now? Great. Just what I need. Human chili as the new delicacy of the stars. Yes, Zelorn replied, as though it was the most natural thing in the universe. Your disaster is now a culinary triumph. Your Earth dish will be featured in the grandest galactic event, the Culinary Convergence. You have made history, Captain. I was too stunned to speak. The reality of what I had just done was finally settling in. Captain Jack Turner, a mere human, had accidentally turned a cooking disaster into an intergalactic culinary masterpiece. And now, the galaxy was about to witness it. Well, I finally said, shaking my head in disbelief, I guess sandwiches are off the menu from now on. Zelorn smiled, his glowing eyes shimmering with pride. We will be sure to send you an invitation for the event, Captain. You've earned it. As the alien chefs continued their celebration, I couldn't help but laugh, realizing that I had somehow made human history in the most ridiculous way possible. And as for the rest of the galaxy, they would soon be eating human chili, and there was no going back now.